The detention bay of the Kithran warship Bloodfang echoed with cruel laughter. Commander Zexthai clicked his mandibles in amusement as he studied the group of human prisoners huddled in the corner of their energy-caged cell. Their uniforms were torn and dirty, their faces marked with exhaustion from 3 days of captivity. "Look at them," Zexthai hissed to his Lieutenant Velmore. "These are the famous human warriors we've heard so much about. The ones who supposedly never surrender?" The other Kithran soldiers gathered around, their chitinous shells gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, their 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws. Their compound eyes reflected the light like black mirrors, studying the humans with predatory interest. Among the 12 human prisoners, Sergeant Marcus Chen sat with his back against the energy barrier, trying to keep his breathing steady. His left arm was in a makeshift sling, courtesy of the battle on Kepler 442b, where his unit had been overwhelmed. Despite the pain, he kept his eyes alert, watching the aliens' movements and listening to their translated conversations. "They're so small," laughed Velmore, pointing at the humans with one of his claws. "I've seen juvenile Kithrans who could snap these creatures in half." The other soldiers joined in the mockery. "Where are their natural weapons?" asked another. "No claws, no venom sacs, no armor plating. How did they ever survive their home world?" Marcus clenched his jaw but remained silent. Around him, his fellow soldiers maintained their discipline despite the jeering. Private Williams, barely 19, shifted nervously. Corporal Rodriguez kept her eyes closed, probably running through escape scenarios in her mind. The others sat in various states of exhaustion and pain. "I heard they're pack animals," Zexthai continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "They can't survive alone. Weak, dependent creatures who need groups to function." "Is that supposed to be impressive?" Velmore scraped his claws against the floor, creating an unpleasant screech. "Even the lowliest scavenger species travel in packs when they're weak." Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying across the detention bay. "We travel in packs because we choose to, not because we have to." The Kithrans turned toward him, surprised by his response. Zexthai approached the energy barrier, looming over the seated human. "Oh, the small one speaks. Tell me, little warrior, what makes you think you have a choice in anything?" "Because," Marcus replied, meeting the alien's compound gaze without flinching, "choice is what separates us from animals. We fight together because we want to protect each other, not because instinct forces us." This drew more laughter from the Kithrans. "Protect each other?" Zexthai gestured at the imprisoned humans. "Look how well that worked out. Your entire unit is captured, and your ship is destroyed. Where is this protection now?" "Still here," said Corporal Rodriguez, opening her eyes. "We're all still breathing, aren't we?" "For now," Velmore growled, "but that can change quickly. The hegemony has little use for weak prisoners." Marcus stood slowly, favoring his injured arm. Despite being shorter than even the smallest Kithran, he carried himself with quiet dignity. "You keep calling us weak, but I notice it took a full battle fleet to capture one human reconnaissance ship." Zexthai's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of irritation. "Your ship was destroyed because you were outnumbered 50-1. That's not strength, that's mathematics." "And yet," Private Williams found his voice, surprising everyone including himself, "you still lost 4 ships." The detention bay fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. The Kithrans exchanged glances, their earlier amusement fading. It was true. The human ship Resilience had fought with desperate fury, taking down 2 destroyers and 2 frigates before succumbing to overwhelming firepower. "Lucky shots," Velmore snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," Marcus conceded. "Or maybe you underestimated us. Wouldn't be the first time." "Underestimated?" Zexthai leaned closer to the energy barrier. "You think we underestimate your species? We've studied your military records, human. We know your capabilities. Do you? Rodriguez asked. Because if you really understood humans, you'd know that our greatest strength isn't our weapons or our tactics. It's something you can't measure in your databases. And what would that be? Zexthai challenged. Marcus smiled for the first time since their capture. Loyalty. The word seemed to hang in the air. The Kithrans looked puzzled, their translators struggling with the concept. Loyalty, Velmore repeated. Ah, yes. Pack bonding. We've observed this in many species. Temporary alliances for mutual benefit. Not temporary, Williams said, gaining confidence. And not for benefit. We're loyal even when it costs us everything. Impossible, Zexthai dismissed. All behavior serves self-preservation ultimately. Your scientists confirmed this long ago. Our scientists, Marcus said quietly. Never met a dog. The Kithrans looked confused at this reference. Their databases contained information about Earth's animal life, but they had focused primarily on threats and resources. Domestic animals were considered irrelevant to military intelligence. What is a dog? Velmore asked. Before Marcus could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed, and the sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridors outside the detention bay. Zexthai touched his communication device. "Bridge, report!" "Commander," came the panicked voice of the bridge officer. "We're detecting an unauthorized vessel approaching from the asteroid belt. It's small, but it's moving at impossible speeds and somehow avoiding our sensors." Impossible. Our sensor grid covers 3 light minutes in all directions. "Sir, the vessel just appeared on our scopes 50,000 kilometers away and closing fast. We never saw it coming." Zexthai's compound eyes widened. He looked at the humans, who were now sitting up with renewed interest. "What ship could approach undetected?" he demanded of Marcus. Marcus's smile widened. "You wanted to know about dogs, Commander. Looks like you're about to get a demonstration." The ship shuddered as something impacted the hull. Not weapons fire. Something had physically made contact with their vessel. The lights flickered, and the energy barrier around the human cell wavered for a moment. "Impossible," Velmore hissed. "Nothing could dock with us without permission codes." "That depends," Rodriguez said, "on whether it needs permission." Another impact, stronger this time. The Kithrans looked nervously at each other, their earlier confidence evaporating. "Commander," the bridge officer's voice was tight with fear. "Something just burned through our hull plating on Deck 7. We're showing a breach, but our sensors can't identify what caused it." Marcus stood up fully now, ignoring the pain in his arm. His fellow soldiers rose with him, their exhaustion forgotten. "You asked what makes humans different," he said to Zexthai. "You're about to find out. Some bonds can't be broken by distance, time, or even death. And when you threaten a human's pack..." The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power kicked in. In the red glow of the emergency lighting, the humans looked different somehow. Less like defeated prisoners and more like predators waiting for the right moment. "The pack comes looking for them," Marcus finished. Commander Zexthai backed away from the cell, his claws extending reflexively. Around him, his soldiers raised their weapons, but they didn't know what to aim at. Another impact shook the ship, and this time they could hear something moving in the ventilation system above them. Something that moved with purpose and absolute determination. The hunt had begun. The sounds in the ventilation system grew louder and more distinct. It wasn't random movement. Whatever was up there knew exactly where it was going. The Kithrans tracked the noise with their weapons, but the creature moved too quickly and unpredictably for them to get a clear target. "Bridge!" Zexthai barked into his communicator. "Status report!" "Sir, we've lost contact with sections 4 through 7. Security teams aren't responding. Whatever's on board, it's moving through areas that should be impossible to access." Velmore clicked his mandibles nervously. "Commander, maybe we should move the prisoners to a more secure location." "No!" Zexthai snapped. "These humans know something. They're staying right here until we get answers." A new sound joined the ventilation noises. A low, rhythmic thumping that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The Kithrans had never heard anything like it. Private Williams tilted his head, listening carefully. A slow smile spread across his face. "Is that—" "Sounds like it," Rodriguez confirmed, her eyes bright with hope. Marcus nodded, his expression mixing relief with something the Kithrans couldn't identify. Pride, perhaps, or vindication. "What do you humans hear that we cannot?" Zexthai demanded. "The sound of someone very happy," Marcus replied, "and very determined." The thumping grew faster, more excited. It was moving through the ship's structure, getting closer to the detention bay. Several Kithran soldiers shifted nervously, their natural predator instincts warning them that something was wrong with this situation. "Commander!" came another panicked voice over the communicator. "We're getting reports from all decks. Something is systematically disabling our security systems. But our cameras only show empty corridors. That's impossible. Nothing can move that fast." "Sir, it's not moving fast. It's moving smart. Whatever it is knows our ship better than we do." Zexthai studied the human prisoners suspiciously. "How is that possible? You've been on our ship for 3 days. There's no way you could have mapped our systems." "We didn't," Marcus said simply. "But someone else did." The detention bay door suddenly hissed open, though no one had triggered it. The Kithrans spun toward the entrance, weapons raised, but the doorway remained empty. "Motion sensors!" Velmore ordered. "Full scan!" "Nothing, sir. Doorway is clear." But Marcus was looking up at the ventilation grate above them. It had been silently removed and set aside. In the darkness of the vent opening, 2 points of reflected light gleamed down at them. "There," Marcus said softly. The Kithrans looked up just as something dropped from the ceiling. It landed silently in the middle of their formation. A sleek figure in advanced stealth armor that seemed to bend light around itself. For a moment it was almost invisible. Then it stood up. The figure was human-sized but moved with impossible grace and speed. Its helmet reflected the emergency lights like a mirror, hiding its features. In its hands were weapons the Kithrans didn't recognize, compact, efficient, and aimed with deadly precision. "Impossible," Velmore breathed. "Our sensors showed no life signs." The armored figure tilted its head toward Marcus, and somehow, despite the helmet, Marcus could feel it smiling. "Hello, Ghost," Marcus said. "Took you long enough?" Ghost, the figure's call sign, moved its head in what might have been a shrug. Then it raised one hand and made a series of rapid gestures. Sign language. "He says he had to be careful," Rodriguez translated. "Didn't want to wake the neighbors." Zexthai's compound eyes darted between the humans and the newcomer. "One soldier. You send one soldier against an entire warship?" Ghost turned toward the Kithran commander and tilted its head as if considering the question. Then it reached up and touched the side of its helmet. The stealth system deactivated with a soft hum, and the armor became visible as matte black tactical gear. But that wasn't what made the Kithrans step back in shock. It was what emerged from a hidden compartment in the armor's back. A head poked out, furry, with upright ears and intelligent brown eyes. It looked around the detention bay with obvious interest, its tongue hanging out slightly. "That," said Marcus, "is a dog." The creature, no bigger than a Kithran's torso, jumped down from Ghost's back and landed on the floor with surprising grace. Its tail wagged as it saw the human prisoners, and it let out a single happy bark. The Kithrans recoiled as if they'd been struck. What is that sound?" Velmore stammered. "That's Max saying hello," Williams explained. "He's excited to see us." Max, apparently the dog's name, trotted over to the energy barrier and sat down, looking expectantly at Ghost. His tail continued wagging, thumping against the floor in a steady rhythm. Ghost reached into another compartment and pulled out a small device. With practiced efficiency, they attached it to the detention cell's control panel. The energy barrier flickered and died. The moment the barrier fell, Max bounded into the cell, jumping up to greet each human prisoner in turn. His joy was infectious and unmistakable. He whined softly when he saw Marcus's injured arm gently sniffing at the makeshift sling. "Good boy, Max," Marcus murmured, scratching behind the dog's ears with his good hand. "I'm okay." The Kithrans watched this interaction with growing bewilderment. Their translators were providing data about the creature, a domesticated carnivore from Earth, no significant combat capability, no natural weapons beyond basic teeth and claws. Yet the humans were treating it like a beloved pack member. "I don't understand," Zexthai said. "This creature has no military value. Why would you risk a rescue mission to bring it?" Ghost finally spoke, their voice filtered through the helmet's speakers. "You've got it backwards, Commander." "What do you mean?" "Max didn't come along on a rescue mission," Ghost explained, checking their weapons systematically. "We came along on his." The Kithrans looked even more confused. Max, meanwhile, had finished greeting the prisoners and was now sitting alertly by Ghost's side, his ears perked forward as he watched the alien soldiers. "Impossible," Velmore protested. "Animals don't conduct rescue operations." "Max isn't just an animal," Rodriguez said, accepting a weapon from Ghost's equipment pack. "He's family." "Family." Zexthai's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You risk military assets for genetic relatives?" "Not genetic," Marcus corrected, slowly getting to his feet. "Chosen. Max chose us and we chose him. That bond is stronger than genetics." The ship shuddered again and new alarms began blaring. Ghost touched their helmet, apparently receiving a communication. "Cavalry's here," they announced. 3 minutes until the extraction ship docks." "Extraction ship?" Zexthai's voice rose to a near shriek. "How many vessels did you bring?" "Just one," Ghost replied casually, "but it's a good one." Max barked once, sharply, and his demeanor changed instantly. His ears flattened back, his lips pulled away from his teeth, and his tail stopped wagging. He was staring at the detention bay door with intense focus. Ghost immediately raised their weapon, following Max's line of sight. "Incoming," they said tersely. The detention bay doors burst open, and a squad of Kithran shock troops poured in. Their weapons charged and ready. They wore heavier armor than the ship's regular crew, and their movement spoke of extensive combat experience. "Surrender immediately," the lead trooper commanded. "You are outnumbered and outgunned." Ghost didn't move. Max remained in his alert position, but his focus had shifted. He was no longer looking at the shock troops. He was looking past them, at something in the corridor beyond. "Actually," Ghost said conversationally, "I think you might want to reconsider that assessment." The lead shock trooper laughed, a harsh, chittering sound. "One human and a pet against 12 Kithran elites? Your mathematics are poor." Max's tail began wagging again, slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. He looked up at Ghost and made a small whimpering sound of excitement. Ghost nodded. "I know, boy." "I hear her too." "Hear what?" Zexthai demanded. The answer came from the corridor beyond the detention bay, a sound that made every Kithran in the room freeze in terror. It was deep, resonant, and unmistakably predatory, a howl that spoke of hunt and pack and the absolute certainty of victory. Then another howl joined it, and another. Max threw back his head and added his voice to the chorus, his smaller howl blending perfectly with the others. The sound echoed through the ship's corridors, and suddenly the Kithrans understood that they weren't dealing with just one rescue operation. They were dealing with an entire pack. and the pack had come for their family. The howls grew closer, echoing through the ship's corridors like an ancient song of war. The Kithran shock troops shifted nervously, their weapons tracking every shadow and movement. Their compound eyes, designed to detect the slightest motion, were seeing things that couldn't possibly be there. "How many?" Velmore whispered. Ghost tilted their head, listening to the approaching sounds. "Pack of 8 plus Max makes 9. Alpha female, 2 juveniles, rest are adults. They've been tracking us for 6 hours. "Tracking through space?" Zexthai's voice cracked with disbelief. "Not through space," Marcus said, watching Max's excited behavior. "Through bonds you can't understand. They didn't track our ship. They tracked us." The lead shock trooper snarled. "Impossible! Your species has no telepathic capabilities." "Don't need telepathy," Rodriguez replied, checking her weapon. "When you truly care about someone, you know when they're in trouble. You feel it." Max suddenly bolted toward the doorway, his tail wagging so hard his entire body wiggled. He stopped just short of the threshold and sat down, vibrating with barely contained excitement. A low growl echoed from the corridor, followed by the soft sound of padded feet on metal decking. The Kithran's sensors still showed nothing, but Max's behavior made it clear that something was approaching. Then she appeared. The alpha female stepped into the detention bay doorway with the confident grace of a born leader. She was larger than Max, her coat a mix of gray and black that seemed to absorb the emergency lighting. Her eyes swept the room once, cataloging threats and allies with intelligence that made several Kithrans step back involuntarily. Behind her came the others, dogs of various breeds and sizes, each wearing the same type of compact armor that had protected Max. They moved like a coordinated unit, spreading out to cover different angles of the room without any apparent signal. "Military working dogs," Ghost explained, pride evident in their filtered voice. "Search and rescue specialists mostly, but they've had tactical training." "The Alpha," Ghost pointed to her. "That's Luna. She's been leading search and rescue operations for 8 years. The Black Lab is Duke, explosive detection specialist. The German Shepherd is Ranger, tracking expert." Each dog was introduced with the respect due a fellow soldier. The Kithrans listened with growing amazement as Ghost rattled off accomplishments and specialties that would be impressive for sentient beings. "But they're just animals," the lead shock trooper protested. Luna turned her attention to him, and for a moment the Kithran found himself looking into eyes that held depths of intelligence and judgment he hadn't expected. She didn't growl or bare her teeth. She simply looked at him with the calm assessment of a professional soldier evaluating a potential threat. The shock trooper took an involuntary step backward. "Just animals," Marcus repeated softly. "You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means." Duke, the Black Lab, approached the Kithran weapons cautiously. His nose twitched as he investigated them. Then he sat down and looked at Ghost with the universal canine expression of "found something." "Explosives," Ghost translated. "Duke's telling us these weapons have unstable power cores. One wrong move and they'll overload." Zexthai looked down at his weapon in alarm. "That's impossible. These are military-grade pulse rifles. They don't have explosive components." Ranger, the German Shepherd, had been moving around the edge of the room. Now he sat down near one of the wall panels and barked once, sharply. Ghost moved to investigate, running a scanner over the panel. "Hull breach behind here? Small one, but it's growing. Ranger says we've got maybe 10 minutes before this section loses atmosphere." "How can he possibly know that?" Velmore demanded. "Because he's trained to find people trapped in collapsed buildings," Williams explained. "He knows the sound of structural failure better than your engineers do." The youngest dog, barely more than a puppy, had somehow gotten behind the Kithran formation without anyone noticing. It sat down near the emergency controls and tilted its head at Ghost. "Scout says there's a way to seal that breach, but we'd need to reroute power from the detention systems. Zexthai looked around the room with growing panic. His weapons were apparently unstable, his ship was compromised, and somehow a pack of Earth animals had better intelligence about his vessel than he did. "This is impossible," he muttered. "They're just dogs." Luna padded over to Marcus and gently took his injured arm in her mouth, applying just enough pressure to support it without causing pain. Her touch was so careful, so precise, that Marcus was able to move more freely. "Medical training, too," Ghost noted. "Luna's certified in battlefield first aid. She saved more lives than most combat medics." The alpha female then did something that shattered every assumption the Kithrins had made. She looked directly at Zexthai, held his gaze for a long moment, then slowly walked over to him. The commander froze as the large dog approached. Every instinct screamed that he was facing a predator, but Luna's body language spoke of something else entirely. She sat down in front of him and very gently placed one paw on his leg. What is she doing?" he whispered. Marcus smiled. "She's trying to tell you something, Commander. Luna's specialty isn't just search and rescue, she's also trained in psychological support. She recognizes someone who's afraid. I am not afraid." But Luna's response was to lean slightly against the Kithrin commander's leg, offering comfort to someone in distress. Her presence was calming in a way that bypassed logic and spoke directly to something deeper. For the first time since the humans had been captured, Zexthai's aggressive posture softened slightly. "She's telling you," Ghost said quietly, "that you don't have to be the enemy. These dogs have worked with dozens of different species. They judge beings by their actions, not their appearance." Duke chose that moment to approach one of the shock troopers and sit down, offering the same calm presence. Then Ranger did the same with another. One by one, the dogs distributed themselves among the Kithrins, not as threats, but as companions. The transformation in the room was remarkable. The rigid military standoff began to dissolve as ancient instincts responded to the dog's patient, non-threatening presence. "I still don't understand," Velmore said, though his voice had lost its harsh edge. A young border collie had somehow convinced him to scratch behind her ears. "Understanding isn't required," Rodriguez explained. "Just acceptance. These dogs chose to risk their lives to come after us, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, because we're pack." Max, meanwhile, had been busy with his own mission. He'd found the ship's internal communication system, and with his nose had somehow activated it. Suddenly, the ship was filled with the sound of barking, dozens of dogs throughout the vessel, all calling out to each other in a complex pattern of communication. "The rest of the pack," Ghost said. "They've taken control of your ship, Commander. Not through violence or destruction, but through pure, determined love." Zexthai looked around the detention bay. His shock troops were being systematically calmed by creatures that should have been insignificant. His ship was being navigated by beings his databases classified as non-sentient support animals. Everything he thought he knew about hierarchy and power was being challenged by wet noses and wagging tails. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Same thing we've always wanted," Marcus replied. "To go home, to protect our pack, to live in peace." Luna looked up at Zexthai and made a soft, whimpering sound. Not distress, a question. "She's asking if you want to be part of the pack," Ghost translated. "It's an invitation, Commander. These dogs have decided you're not a threat anymore. You're just someone who needs friends." The Kithrin commander looked down at the large dog, still leaning against his leg. In her eyes, he saw something he'd never expected: acceptance. Not submission, not fear, not calculation, just the simple offer of companionship. "Your species," he said slowly, "forms bonds with creatures that can't even speak your language." "Language isn't necessary," Marcus said. "Love is universal." As if to prove the point, Max approached Zextai and dropped a small object at his feet. It was a Kithrin energy cell, one that had been carefully removed from a weapon without damaging it. The dog's tail wagged as he looked up expectantly. "He's returning your property," Williams laughed. "Max doesn't like it when people have dangerous toys." The absurdity of the situation finally hit Zek's thigh. His entire worldview was being restructured by a group of creatures that his science told him were inferior, yet who had just demonstrated intelligence, loyalty, courage, and compassion that his own species rarely achieved. "The detention fields are down," Velmore reported quietly. "The humans could leave at any time." "Yes," Marcus said, getting to his feet with Luna's gentle assistance. "But we're not going anywhere until we know you understand." "Understand what?" Ghost removed their helmet, revealing a young woman with determined eyes and a gentle smile. "That strength isn't about who can fight the hardest or who has the biggest weapons. It's about who you're willing to fight for." She looked around the room at the unprecedented sight of alien soldiers being comforted by Earth dogs. "And Commander," she continued, "if you ever threaten our pack again, you'll discover just how far that loyalty extends. We didn't bring one ship to rescue 12 humans. We brought a fleet, and every ship has a crew that considers these people family." Max barked once, happily, and somehow that single sound contained more threat than any weapon the Kithrins possessed, because it was the sound of someone who would never, ever give up. The sound of a pack that would always come home.